Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hi. Thanks for joining me here. Listen, we have had a packed day so far. Lots of stories that we've heard. We have talked about why people need to think about cloud native. We have talked about why people need to think about transformation differently. We have heard a really great transformation story. I kind of feel like we got to wrap this all up in the how. Right? Like, so how do we start getting there? And so that's why I'm putting you two in the hot seat right now. Let's talk about a little program that HCL has put together, a little program that you guys are coming up with, right?
Yeah.
Small, tiny,
Yeah, tiny little thing.
tiny little thing. But I think it's really cool because I want to emphasize a couple things that we are trying to do things differently.
Yeah.
Right? So the companies that are coming to HCL are trying to do things differently. They have to be met with something different, right? And so that's where you guys come in with the Customer Experience Studio. Tell me what it is that you guys are doing.
Sure. Well, I think you said it really well as a very good straight lead-in, Liz, that we are approaching things a little bit differently than some other software companies do. And as you've heard a couple of times, we do think that some of our clients should expect more from a software company. And that's where the CX Studio comes in. So there are a number of us. In fact, amongst all of us, there's over 275 years of digital agency and digital consulting experience. And what we look to do, bring those skills to bear for our clients so we can help them get more value more quickly from HCL software.
Okay.
Really uncover, opportunities faster so that
Right.
we can get on top of those, start planning around those, and, have some fun while we're at it.
I love that. But so you know that I'm going to have to ask you, I'm
Yeah,
going to have to ask you like the kind of like, no, I'm not tough. It's like a mean question, but it's not. It's like not a
Okay.
mean girl question.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
here's the question. I think a lot of folks are going to be like, oh, it's a customer success team that's going to send me to a design thinking workshop. Like, because
Yeah.
that's kind of what happens a lot of times.
yeah.
I'm not going to lie. So convince me I'm wrong.
Okay.
Number one is that we really want to kind of leave people with a product or an asset that is actually going to enable them to make their vision happen within
Yeah.
their organization.
So it's not just thinking differently. It's not just saying, hey, imagine what it would be like to be the CFO.
No.
Right? Because that's a lot of times when people don't
yeah.
know that methodology and they're still doing the workshop,
Sure.
that's kind of where you land.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say what we're doing, it is informed by design thinking. So
Right.
there are elements of that, but there are also things that we've taken from our experience with strategic consulting
Right.
and things that are core to systems integration. So you really get the harmonization of those three different and usually complementary kinds of
Sure.
disciplines. And we bring them to bear without billable hours and without selling by deliverables.
Right.
So
That's the thing. But I'm just going to assume here that you have like a methodology or a type of, a process that you're going to walk everyone through, right? And we've had a chance to talk about it before, but maybe now's a good time to kind of share with our audience what that methodology is.
yeah, no, that's a great next point is after we have talked a little bit about what it is.
Yeah.
And the methodology, it's nothing magical, but it is something.
I don't get to
that-
pray, like, fairy dust doesn't get to go on. I was doing that all the damn time during the panel, like, so I don't get to do that
The
here.
magic is inside the phases of the
Inside,
process.
okay.
yeah,
good,
unfortunately,
good, good.
it's manifested deeply within there. But no, it's three steps that we do. In each of those steps, though, we do look for chances to bring to bear things that we have gleaned from design thinking, from strategy consulting, from systems integration to come through. But we start just with the opportunity and then get into synthesizing things from different inputs, different perspectives, anchoring back to that business case,
Right.
the sets of opportunities and pain points that we've identified. And then where this deviates from play CFO for a day in design thinking is with the outcomes. Because if our clients are going to get more value more quickly from HCL software, there have to be tangible artifacts that guide
Right.
them there.
Yeah.
And
Right.
we'll explore those in greater
Yeah.
detail as well.
Totally.
Terrific.
We're not leaving people like holding a bag of
Right, like here's your workshop paper.
fairy dust.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Okay, so I want to double tap into opportunity just really quickly here,
Yeah.
right? Because I think a lot of times when people, say, okay, we're going to help you realize the opportunity. And they're like, my opportunity is I got to grow. Like, like my opportunity, or they think in this kind of narrow window of, okay, the challenge I have is I have to engage in digital transformation, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So how do you start to think about that differently, right?
So we have a bunch of methods to depending on the client's, composition, nature, or whatever, we have a bunch of methods that help kind of draw that out and help us kind of frame up the opportunity. First of all, the first method is loyalty loop. And the loyalty loop basically is a method for us to kind of evaluate a user experience and break it down into different phases. And within those phases, we actually dive deeper based upon the user type to really understand kind of the moments that matter to those particular users. So we're talking about a full life cycle, and it doesn't matter if it's a B2B, B2E, B2C situation.
Right.
Our cycle basically maps to it. But when we zoom in on those different phases, we can really understand those moments that really kind of, if you deliver at that point in time, you'll start accruing kind of the kind of trust
Yes.
that we've been
That
talking about all
currency.
day.
That
Yes.
currency that keeps coming
Yeah,
back. And I like that it's a loop. So I like that you're talking about a loop, right?
It's a cycle.
It's
Yeah.
that, they need something now. They're going to need something again. It's going to be a different thing. Like, are you able to come and do that? But you said something earlier that I think is super interesting, right? Because it's that idea of going in and saying, okay, let's talk about this challenge. Let's talk about this opportunity. And sometimes when people don't necessarily know they have the tools or the skills or the mindset or the customer or the opportunity to do something differently, they'll say, oh, we can't do this.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my gosh, I can't possibly get to loyalty loop. I can't do it. Bye. See you later.
And that's where some of the, applied a little bit differently, but some of the rigor that's inherent in systems integration can be really valuable. So in
Right.
each of these steps that Aaron was talking about, we will dig in a little bit. So it's a moment that matters. Why does it matter?
Right.
What's the value of it mattering? And then what are the parts of the enterprise that are touching that moment that matters? And then that leads us to exploring what the clients have. And where we've had some success, Liz, is taking something that the clients maybe thought, whether it be data, whether it be existing personas, whether it be advertising campaigns or web analytics, but pulling it together and shaping it into something that can feed some of this plan.
So it's usable.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that because I think a lot of times people just don't, listen, you can't know what you don't know.
Right.
Sure.
Like fundamentally, you can't.
But these companies do know stuff, but they just forgot they knew it. And so like we help them mine kind of those diamonds, those gems within their
Yeah.
organization through interviews with key stakeholders.
And then you get the binder that was sitting on the shelf from some initiative
Right,
3 years ago
right.
that has gold in there.
But isn't it also like sometimes they think something is a challenge, but it's actually an opportunity?
Yes.
And you kind of need to be the ones that are like, hey, like that's the opportunity.
That's what the outside point of view kind of brings to the table.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and that's where we see like the biggest leaps of kind of, benefit from.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, opportunity, awesome. Now that we've identified that, we've seen what we have, we know where to go. Now we start to synthesize differently. Now we start to think differently. What are some of those examples? Because I think a lot of people get stuck in an idea of like linear, like linear journeys. How do we get there? But you guys are talking about something very different and rethinking kind of a fundamental concept around customer, that being loyalty.
Yeah.
And the concept.
Customers and users.
Yeah.
And so we have a framework called Loyalty Loop, and that kind of has a life cycle kind of stage and stage base that basically allows us to break down the user experience and really kind of dig deep into each one of those stages to uncover those moments that matter for any particular user base, which we create like maybe like 20 per user base.
Okay,
And
so this isn't just one journey. This is
No, these are many
complex.
journeys, many
Okay.
journeys to
Yeah,
Awesome.
and it's got applications for B2B or B2C or internal business to employee.
Okay.
A variety of different use cases.
But
So
you are talking a loop here, which I like, because it's that constant motion of,
It's never ending.
right,
You
like,
always have to be with your customer, your users, to understand what they need.
I love that. I love that. But it also takes rethinking what we're giving our users, right? Like it takes rethinking not only who they are, but what they need in that moment. You talk about moments that matter. Moments that matter have to be met with something, right? And especially our teams, they want to meet them with something that's like awesome, right? They all want to be a superhero, right?
Right.
Everyone wants to be.
Yeah.
But our customers are kind of also replicating that because they got to be everywhere. They got to, So when you start to talk about a loyalty loop, you're also talking about how you empower people to do that. So,
And
so what are you talking about
And there are other methods in our repertoire. Basically, one of them is superpowers. I think Gary mentioned them.
Yeah, he
early
mentioned
on.
them earlier. That's why I'm like, let's talk about these superpowers.
Right. And superpowers can incarnate in many different ways. So it's kind of a framework and a method to kind of unlock the imagination of our clients and get them out of thinking kind of like the way they normally do. So we really kind of dig in and say, like, well, if your customer, your user is actually looking to do this, what kind of superpower would enable them to achieve this? And we've come up with like a million different ones, but like
Okay, give me a couple.
you
got to give me a couple.
as an example, like there's like the prototypical one, which is flying or teleportation.
Yes,
Yeah.
fine.
And this comes of a result of like maybe the user needs to be in multiple places at a bunch of different times.
Right.
And so like
Or the user's footprint is in a bunch of different places at a
Right.
bunch of different times, right?
Yeah.
We're moving all around. Our customers are moving all around. So if I have to teleport, if I have to fly.
remote presence features.
Right. I love
Link
it.
up directly, and they basically illustrate that particular superpower.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of them out there. I mean, there's X-ray vision and other things
Right.
to that effect. But basically, like, it's a fun kind of exercise that gets people thinking in new ways that allows us to kind of
That aren't corporate.
No.
That don't get fit in. So that I
Well, and
dig
where-
this, right? Because you're like, no, you're not thinking about, you fit into the role of the CFO. It's
Right.
no, your customer wants to, shoot lasers. Like you're
or they want to be invisible for whatever reason, and maybe
Right.
maybe an internal user wants to be invisible when they're using AI and personalization to guide their customers through their experience.
right. That's a superpower.
Yeah, so both
love it.
internal and external kind of users can have that
Right.
type of superpower or any type of superpower.
But I like that it levels the playing field on that, because when you're thinking about superpowers and superheroes, you can think about the user and you can think about your internal user, your customer, anyone who is touching your digital product.
Yes,
Suddenly can have a superpower, and that's really cool to think through.
and as fancy as an idea as it is, it's very practical when you get down to it. I mean, it gets down to features and functions.
Ultimately, it's a way to think differently about features that can be manifested and then ultimately can be built and delivered and expressed through experiences. Because we did talk a little bit earlier, Liz, about the fact that we don't just want to have another binder that sits on the shelf for 3 years.
Little
So
dusty.
yeah, exactly, and can weigh things down. But no, what we do try to do is work all of this stuff, which can be kind of fun. I mean, Aaron's opened my eyes to different ways of exploration and investigation.
I love it.
But we do want to express something tangible and hand some tangible outcomes to our clients as a result of this acceleration.
That, and I love that, because I think there are exercises where you can ask people to think differently. It's another thing to help people do differently. And that's when you need the thing. You need
Right.
they need to be able to have something tangible they walk away with.
And that comes to fruition in many different ways. I mean, it can be like a deck to talk to key stakeholders that
Right.
really tells the story of what you're trying to do. Or it could be a clickable prototype
Right.
that actually can facilitate a dialogue with your technology team.
But you have a way of actually showing people, like, because like with, I know that we had a chance to talk about this before, like with the insurance industry.
Right.
Yep.
Right, and have that example of where you're seeing like, hey, here's the B2C example, here's the B to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
have all of that, and we can demonstrate it all, where
Yeah.
you can see how different people are having different experiences, but in different places.
Yeah.
Yet it's all leading to that same outcome.
Yeah, and in this particular case, this insurance client like had multiple different, like vastly different user groups.
Yeah.
From agent, from customer to kind of adjusters. And what we were trying to do is choreograph all those people around, like creating the best insurance experience for the customer as possible. And so like we'll create kind of artifacts that will tell the story, you know, at a pretty high level, but still at a good technical level, so
Yeah.
that we can really kind of draw in and start kind of thinking about the architecture, the implementation, but more importantly, like how are we strategically going to choreograph all these different users together?
Right, right.
Yeah.
What I love about this too is that it's not just thinking about a single journey, it's thinking about all the intersection points of how these journeys meld together. And,
Yeah.
and that's what you need to look at when you're talking about something. But it's also something you need to talk about if you're really looking to take advantage of a composable architecture.
Right.
Right. If you're
Yeah.
looking at that cloud native environment, it's not just, hey, I got something up online, right? It's
Right.
not like, yay,
Yeah.
we did it, high five.
Yeah, we got something
It's all of
coherent
this.
that's, you know, touching all of these different user types.
Yeah.
And we do get into a reasonable amount of fidelity, because ultimately we do have, you know, software products that will be
Right.
knitted together, supporting these experiences. And what we want to help our clients do is get a jump start on
Right.
actually implementing these things that will realize some of these benefits that we talked about when we were framing the opportunity.
Yeah, and you said something to me earlier that I thought was really interesting, but really important as part of the conversation, that this process is not intended to be a sales pitch. And I think that that is something really important for clients who are looking at this, right? Because I think that, you know, listen, we've all been through the wars before, right? And I think the cynic who's going to sit here and look at this is going to be like, oh, so in other words, you want to sell me 10 different things.
Right.
You're gonna walk me through this really complex architecture, because you're going to then come and tell me, haha, now you need the, you know, now you need the next
this
tier up,
widget,
haha,
yes.
you know?
Yeah.
But that's not what you guys are talking about. That's not what this is.
No.
No, this is, you know, clients that are considering or have already, you know, purchased.
Oh, even
the-
considering.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
awesome.
Yeah, early stages. If they're looking, can this help me realize some value? Well, we get into, let's frame what the opportunity is, let's synthesize it, let's, you know, explore it
Yeah.
through a couple different dimensions and see where it
Okay,
can go.
but that's where your comment about sometimes they don't know what they already have, it's already there,
Right.
they've already have those ideas, they already
Yeah.
have the opportunity, that's gotta be where it becomes so important.
Sure.
Where the light bulb goes on.
Yeah, and it is about them telling their story to the people that they will help them move forward in their efforts.
Yeah.
And so the last thing, so we're doing kind of, you know, flows, we're doing prototypes, but we're also doing kind of actual software products, actual software assets. We're providing,
cool.
we're actually creating those for clients. So not only are we talking to them about their kind of internal processes
Yeah.
and their internal capabilities, but we're actually linking our platform capabilities to their processes in, you know, like
Wow.
Yeah.
in
Okay.
a prototype.
Yeah,
That's
so what we're
awesome.
looking to do, maybe at a couple points in this graphic, we would create a targeted prototype that would then extend into a full-on proof of concept.
Yeah.
That would go
Right.
to the client's development team or a third-party partner. Some of these things will get fed even into our product development team. If we have something
Nice.
that's good that might
Exactly.
be transferable
Yeah.
across
Yeah.
industries. So just getting in there and trying to wrestle with some of these real problems and real solution
Yeah.
needs can be virtuous all around.
I mean, hey, that's thinking different right there, right? Is that this loyalty loop is about you and your customers as well, and you guys are living
Yeah.
that, which I think is awesome. Okay, so listen, this is awesome, love it. But here's the question that everyone's going to ask, right? Like everyone's sitting watching the screen, they've been watching for a couple hours, they've just seen this. Where do we go from here? Where do we get started? Because I think that's, if people are ready,
Yeah.
they're ready to think differently, they're ready to maybe get some new ideas,
Try
get some new
something
journeys,
new.
try something new, yes. So they're ready.
Yeah.
Where do we send them?
So we send them to a place to help them structure some of that thinking and some of that doing.
Right.
So we do have a landing page that has a couple of things on it. It does describe in a little bit further detail some of the process elements that we were discussing
cool.
here. It has a couple of example outcomes that other clients have achieved from this, and then have the ability just for a little bit of contact information, but then
Just to reach
also
out.
areas of interest so
Okay.
that we could understand, getting
Cool.
back to the opportunity areas that they perceive they might have. And that gives us the input to have a conversation.
Great.
And the team
Great.
is waiting and excited and happy because we are problem solvers at heart. And we
I
just
love that.
we just love to dig into kind
Yeah.
of your client issues and really kind of find that opportunity.
So, we're gonna send people here, we're gonna get new conversations started, but if there was a question that before everyone goes to this landing page and thinks about and goes and starts the conversation, what question are you hoping that people are kind of asking themselves, talking themselves through, just so that there's a tangible place to go here? Because I think when we're asking people to think differently, we've got to actually start asking different questions of ourselves.
I mean, so it starts with kind of you kind of asking yourself whether there's an initiative or a thing that you wanted to do that you haven't been able to do for whatever reason. And
Yes.
whatever those blockers are, bringing in a third party to kind of, give you a new angle on that particular kind of initiative and materials to sell it in.
Right.
I mean, if there's something that you
There's that
wanted to
missing
do,
piece.
yeah, that you just wanted to get done but haven't for whatever reason, like, we can help.
Yeah, that's a conversation to have.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, the missing piece, or also if there's some initiative that is just floundering a little bit, something that
Yeah.
at one point had great promise, but for reasons that
It was the
aren't
awesome
fully-
notebook. It was the
Yeah,
awesome first
yes,
notebook.
Yeah, the awesome binder that hasn't fully been realized.
Right,
But
right.
no, to Aaron's point, I think the fresh perspective that we can bring from a couple of different disciplines
Yeah.
might help them reframe that and get it back on the path to delivering what was conceived, or maybe even more.
And what they want.
what they want,
Everyone
what
wants
they
to be
need.
successful,
Yeah,
right? Like no one wakes up in the morning and is like, I'm gonna fail hard today, right? Everyone wants to go and be and achieve that and flex those superpowers. And I think it's great. I love the conversation. Thank you guys both for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing the conversation. This is the place to go. And hopefully next time we'll hear a lot more stories of all those great examples of all those new superpowers. I can't wait.